Has your dad ever asked you to install a lobster before?
Install a lobster?
Install a lobster.
Not
Like
really,
take it out of the
man.
pan,
Take it out of the pan,
it,
install it. No.
hook it up to the USB port. Okay.
No, alas.
Well, maybe you should get over to China a
Okay.
little bit, because that actually is a common question at the dinner table over there. Specifically,
Okay.
there's this tweet that this 77-year-old guy had like seen on Twitter or whatever equivalent, that OpenClaw was a thing. Everyone was talking about the lobster emojis, and he's like, "Oh, I got to install the lobster.
I gotta get myself one of those lobsters.
I gotta get myself a lobster.
Yeah.
Can you please help me install a lobster?" So I feel like, OpenClaw kind of started as this project out of Austria. Our friend Peter developed it, your friend of mine. And it's this, self-running agentic loop that you install locally on your laptop. It can do things like answer your emails, respond to text messages, browse the web. There are a lot of these plugins that you can use. We had a whole episode a couple weeks ago on it, so I won't belabor the point. But, I thought this was interesting that it seems like it's really landed in China in a really resonant way. They're like these install parties where hundreds of people are showing up. All of the big domestic tech companies are promoting this either directly or as like proxy websites. And I was also talking to a couple of my friends who still have family in China, and they were just blown away as like a general note of how AI forward everyone is there. Like, I don't think that this 77-year-old was an anomaly. I just think that people are a lot more comfortable about like using AI systems than we are here. So
that's right. Yeah.
I'm curious if that's like resonant with your experience, because you've been over there a lot more recently than I have. Like, did you get the notion that there's just something different in the water, that like people feel differently about these systems? And like, is it a technical question or is it like a philosophical question?
Yeah, I think that there's more of an adoption of technical tools by the masses writ large and less of a suspicion of these tools. And I think there is, at least in the United States, and I would certainly say that that applies double fold to if you compare it to Europe, right? Where folks tend to be a little bit more hesitant, I think. Yeah, man. I mean, I think especially if you look at robotics, right? I think China for a long time has been so far ahead of the West when it comes to robotics. And I think China has pioneered a lot of the things that we see in robotics, right? And I think there's this cultural adoption of these tools as something that Chinese folks are really proud of, and see as one of their advantages over the US and Western countries. I think that, the fact of the matter is that Chinese companies have really picked up the pace when it comes to developing AI tools, robotics, right? Hardware writ large. And I think Chinese folks are proud of that and are down to experiment with new models and new hardware more than we are, right?
Even if you're outside of the tech space, you're not an entrepreneur,
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, this, for a while, I've had a Chinese tutor who, I've worked with her for 3-4 years now. And I'm always blown away at her knowledge of AI models and tooling. She's one of the first early adopters of, Claude and Chat and all these other tools.
That's so random.
Even 2-3 years ago, way before my parents, she was already using these tools. I kind of feel like it's just in the cultural psyche to want to be a little bit more of an early adopter kind of culture than here in the West. I think that OpenClaw especially is so interesting because OpenClaw lets us for the first time, I think, really operationalize this idea of a truly virtual assistant in a way that we haven't had before. And I think there is something that's really fitting with China adopting this, given that China tends to be very forward when it comes to hardware and robotics, right? So I think I'll be really curious to see whether Chinese labs are able to take this OpenClaw idea and push it to, its natural,
the real masses.
Its natural singularity, which is like have this running on robots, right? Where OpenClaw isn't just running on your local computer, but also has access to, the physical world via robots that have access to the OpenClaw instance that's running on your computer and that are interacting with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the notion of agentic loops has been very software locked right now in the cloud, and then we're seeing it move on to mobile. We're seeing it move on to your actual hardware. I feel like it's inevitable that it's going to move into like whatever hardware appliances that we're seeing that are kind of adjacent to that. I do wonder if there's this allure of OpenClaw that is also different from some of these other tools, where I think that there is something that's so seductive about the idea that you can just make money as you sleep. I think that that's almost like everyone's goal online within this like hustler culture. And it feels like that's what drives a lot of people to start hacking around with these tools. They're like, oh, I'm just going to build some side hustle. or like I'm going to build an app, throw it up on like Replit or
Yeah.
Lovable and just like let the money start printing. I'm starting to see a decent amount of that culture as part of these OpenClaw communities too, where people are like, "Oh, can I set up some trading agent on OpenClaw and just have it make trades for me?"
Yep.
And this almost this theory that this agent is so much smarter than you are, that it's like you've delegated your really smart friend with just spending 24/7 to make you money, which seems great in theory. I feel like it's a little bit more dubious in
Mm-hmm.
practice, but I think that that is almost like there's an under-discussed like revenue and like profitability
There's like
desire
a hustler culture
behind this a
fundamentally
little
built
bit.
in.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
little bit. And I
Yeah.
wonder if you like manage to partition out those things to be like how many people are just using this for the memes and like personal productivity versus how many people are really jonesing for this to make them some revenue. I wonder what that split would be.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think that this is underscoring the thesis that I have, which is that in 5 years, one of the core primitives is going to be a fully fledged application will be as core of a primitive as, like a div was for HTML, right? Where things are built upon fully fledged out applications and you can stack these things on top of each other to orchestrate these really complicated systems. But humans won't be interacting with modular blocks as small as divs. Those are going to be too atomic for us to even work with. I could see there being in the future, the core primitive being a fully fledged application that you then orchestrate with other applications to build out really complicated systems. And I think OpenClaw would fit really well into that, right? Where you can have, you
It's
could,
like a make me money primitive.
well, like maybe in the future, OpenClaw will let us build these really, really complicated systems that we need for the future, like things that we don't even know how to orchestrate now, right? Like a swarm of agents that are mining an asteroid somewhere, right? I don't know, right? But like the point is like what the core primitive becomes, I think, has fundamentally changed as we see that developing full-fledged applications and even research projects like we saw with auto research have become trivial. Like you can do this in your sleep. So then the question becomes, well, if that is an atomic unit of work where we can instruct someone to do that, it happens, and that is one unit of basically like your labor that you put in, what can we build on top of that? I think that is going to be the next question fundamentally. And I really don't know. I mean, time will tell, but you can imagine that this will let us build some really crazy, complicated systems at the fringes of what we think is even possible now.
I think I'm just waiting for Siri to get one of these brains in it, man. Like this past weekend, I was trying to automate my lights to just wake me up in the morning. You know how hard it is to do that with HomeKit? It's actually impossible. The answer is it's a trick question.
It's impossible.
It's
Okay.
literally impossible to do it with HomeKit that you have out of the box. You have to either install this third-party app called Controller, but then it's just sitting on a device, like an iOS device that you have to have active in your home at all times, which I don't have. So that's not really going to work. Or you have to download this open source software, which is super janky called Home Assistant. And like that has some of the compatibility with the same protocols that HomeKit supports, but they're kind of different. But like Matter, which was the accessory that I use, supports both. It's just such a mess. It's so fractured.
Awful.
This dream of the smart home is like seemingly never going to come to pass. And I was just like, we seem so disconnected. On one hand, we have these models running in the cloud and on my laptop, and then the actual things that we interact with day to day that bill themselves ironically as these catch-all AI assistants just aren't doing shit.
But I guess that coming back to my previous point, like you could imagine a world in which OpenClaw realizes that and it can just build this application for you because it realizes that you don't have this, right? And that you've now just instructed it, hey, I want to be able to turn on my lights. And that as part of one of these core reasoning building blocks, it realizes it has to build out a full-fledged application for you to do this. And it just does that from scratch, right? I think that is the real dream. Like the dream isn't just to have this thing that has access to your crypto wallet and can do things for you. The idea is for this thing to be able to create software that it needs that doesn't exist in order to solve some given task for you that otherwise would be impossible given the current set of libraries in the world.
Here's hoping, man.
Here's hoping, man. Yeah.